an illusion because he did it alone. But when the storyteller, who was the pupil, spoke to the other pupils and explained how the lines are spaced across at intervals which ever decrease towards the roundabout, so that somebody moving across them would have a visual illusion of going faster if they travel across them at the same speed, because the intervals between the space were decreasing. The time it took to travel between the spaces was ever decreasing. And as the time was ever decreasing, it appeared that you were going faster than previously. And the pupils who heard this understood, and they realised that what they'd thought about first of all was an illusion. But now this storyteller, who was a pupil, had taught them something. That something was different to the illusion. And because they'd done it together, it was reality. And reality was different to the illusion. And the pupil who understood this thought, this pupil who's a teacher, is our teacher. He's taught me something. But the pupil who taught this other pupil was thinking, I'm really a storyteller. I was even more confused. So he tried to think of another way of telling the story, where the element of time existed. And does it exist? Isn't everything an illusion? If you do it alone. So I thought, well, I remember this story I read called Pollyanna's Game. The Glad Game was the name of the game, but it came from a book called Pollyanna. Pollyanna Grows Up. Another series written by a man in 1910, long before Maturana, and Hoffman, and Bateson, and Cronin, and many others started talking about contexts, realities, and illusions, dances through time. The language now know and use in family therapy. It sounded a good story, because here's a story about a little girl who was a missionary for his daughter, an only child. And because the man was a missionary, he had a certain vision of life, which could be a context. The context could be that if you're a missionary, you work for God, and God is good, and nothing he does for anybody, or anything he ever does, is bad. No matter what he does or says, everything that he does is intended to be good for everybody who lives and exists in the world. And like all good stories, I suppose when you listen to the storyteller or read the story, one thing you do for yourself is you fix it in time. The storyteller tells it to you verbally. usually starts off something like, once upon a time. Can you remember? In a land far away, you know, little country cottages in the country. Can you remember when that teacher, that storyteller, told you those tales when you were a pupil? And if you accept a story as a story is a fantasy, then you do something yourself. You recreate with that person who's telling that story, which is really an illusion, because they did it alone. You create with that person because you join with them. You listen to what they're saying, and with them, because you do it now. You create reality. Well, within the story of Pollyanna's game, within the story of Pollyanna grows up, there's another story called the Glad Game. Because the father, who's aware that sometimes in life things can seem very hard and harsh, and you can be very sad about not getting something you really want, had to try and think of a way that his daughter would understand that God was really good, and whatever God did was really intended for her benefit and for everybody's benefit in the world. So for her, he had to create something that was different to his reality. And what could be different to his reality but another illusion, perhaps another fantasy. That fantasy he called the Glad Game.